The tiny puppy was barely 3 weeks old when Sarah found him shivering behind a dumpster on that cold October morning. His eyes were still sealed shut, and his little body felt like ice against her warm hands. She had been taking out the trash from her small apartment when she heard the faint whimpering sounds coming from the alley. At first, she thought it might be a kitten, but when she carefully moved the cardboard boxes aside, she discovered something that broke her heart. The puppy was alone, abandoned, and clearly hadn't eaten in days. His ribs showed through his thin coat, and he was so weak he could barely lift his head. Sarah didn't hesitate for even a moment. She scooped him up gently, wrapping him in her soft scarf, and rushed him inside her apartment. She had always been a cat person, living with 3 rescue cats named Whiskers, Shadow, and Luna, but she couldn't leave this helpless creature to die in the cold. Inside her warm apartment, Sarah's 3 cats gathered around curiously as she placed the puppy in a small basket lined with towels. Whiskers, an orange tabby with wise green eyes, approached first and sniffed the newcomer carefully. Shadow, a sleek black cat, watched from a distance with typical feline caution. Luna, a gray and white female, seemed immediately interested in this strange new addition to their family. Sarah quickly called her veterinarian friend, Dr. Martinez, who agreed to meet her at the clinic even though it was Sunday. The examination revealed that the puppy was severely malnourished but otherwise healthy. Dr. Martinez estimated he was about 3 weeks old and would need bottle feeding every few hours to survive. When Sarah asked about the breed, Dr. Martinez examined the puppy's features carefully and delivered surprising news. The puppy was a pit bull mix, probably abandoned because of his breed. Many people still held unfair prejudices against pit bulls, thinking they were naturally aggressive dogs. Dr. Martinez explained that with proper care and socialization, pit bulls could be gentle, loving companions just like any other dog. Sarah looked down at the tiny, helpless creature in her arms and made a decision that would change both their lives forever. She decided to name him Milo, after her grandfather, who had always shown kindness to every living creature he met. For the first few weeks, Sarah became Milo's surrogate mother, feeding him special puppy formula every 3 hours, even setting alarms to wake up during the night. Her cats watched this routine with growing interest, especially Luna, who seemed to understand that this tiny being needed protection and care. As Milo grew stronger and his eyes opened, revealing beautiful brown eyes with flecks of gold, something magical began to happen. Instead of learning typical puppy behaviors from other dogs, Milo started copying everything he saw his feline housemates doing. When the cats gathered for their afternoon grooming session, Milo would sit nearby and attempt to lick his paw and rub it over his face. Just like they did, the cats, surprisingly, accepted Milo as one of their own almost immediately. Whiskers became like a protective older brother, often sleeping curled up next to Milo's basket. Shadow taught him the importance of finding the perfect sunny spot by the window for afternoon naps. Luna showed him how to approach food bowls with proper feline dignity, and how to sit with perfect posture while observing the world outside. By the time Milo was 2 months old, he had developed some very unusual habits for a dog. He preferred to drink water by delicately lapping it with just the tip of his tongue, exactly like his cat siblings. When visitors came to the apartment, instead of running to greet them with typical puppy enthusiasm, Milo would sit back and observe them with the same careful, judgmental expression that cats are famous for. He had learned to move with the silent grace of a feline, placing his paws carefully and deliberately with each step. The most amusing development was Milo's attempt to purr. Whenever Sarah petted him, or when he was particularly content, he would make a low rumbling sound in his throat that was his version of purring. It didn't sound exactly like a cat's purr, but the intention was clearly the same. He had also developed the feline habit of slow blinking at people he trusted, which cat owners know is the ultimate sign of love and trust from a cat. Sarah's friends and family were amazed by Milo's behavior when they visited. They had expected a typical energetic puppy, but instead found a calm, dignified young dog who carried himself like royalty. He would greet visitors by approaching slowly, allowing them to extend their hand for sniffing, and then either graciously accepting their attention or politely walking away if he wasn't in the mood for interaction. The transformation was so complete that Sarah sometimes forgot Milo was actually a dog. He had learned to navigate the apartment furniture like his cat siblings, jumping gracefully from chair to couch to windowsill. He preferred elevated sleeping spots, and would often be found curled up on top of the bookshelf or perched on the back of the sofa, surveying his domain with the satisfied expression of a cat who owns the world. As Milo approached his 3rd month of life, his unique personality had fully emerged. He was confident but not aggressive, playful but not destructive, and affectionate but not needy. He had somehow absorbed all the best qualities of both dogs and cats, creating a personality that was entirely his own. Sarah realized she had witnessed something truly special. A dog who had learned to see the world through feline eyes and had become a better being because of it. As Milo grew bigger, his cat-like behaviors became even more pronounced and entertaining. By 4 months old, he had mastered the art of the feline stretch, extending his front legs forward and arching his back in a perfect yoga pose every morning. Sarah would often find him doing this routine right alongside Whiskers, Shadow, and Luna, as if participating in some secret cat exercise class that only he had been invited to join. The food situation became particularly amusing as Milo developed very specific eating habits that mirrored his feline family. Unlike most dogs who gulp down their food enthusiastically, Milo approached his meals with the careful deliberation of a food critic. He would circle his bowl twice, sniff delicately at the contents, and then eat slowly and thoughtfully, pausing occasionally to clean his face with his paw in the same manner he had observed Luna doing. Sarah discovered that Milo had also adopted the cat philosophy about treats. While most dogs would do anything for a treat, begging and performing tricks eagerly, Milo had learned the feline approach of making humans work for his attention. When Sarah offered him a treat, he would consider it carefully, sometimes accepting graciously and sometimes simply walking away with an air of, perhaps later, if I'm in the mood. This behavior never failed to make visitors laugh, especially those familiar with typical dog behavior. The neighborhood began to take notice of Sarah's unusual pet during their daily walks. Milo had developed a walking style that was distinctly different from other dogs. Instead of pulling on the leash or sniffing every tree and fire hydrant, he walked with measured steps, his head held high, occasionally pausing to observe interesting sights with the patient attention of a cat watching birds. Other dog owners were puzzled by his calm demeanor and his apparent lack of interest in typical dog activities like chasing squirrels or greeting other dogs with enthusiasm. One memorable afternoon, Sarah took Milo to the local dog park for the first time. She was curious to see how he would react to being around other dogs after spending his entire life with cats. The experience was both hilarious and heartwarming. While other dogs ran around playing fetch and wrestling with each other, Milo found a sunny spot near a bench and settled down to observe the chaos with the amused tolerance of an elderly gentleman watching children play. When other dogs approached him wanting to play, Milo's responses were purely feline. He would sit up straighter, fix them with a steady stare, and sometimes offer a slow blink that seemed to say, "I acknowledge your existence, but I'm not particularly interested in your games." Some dogs found this behavior confusing and would circle him curiously, trying to figure out why this dog wasn't acting like a dog. The most entertaining moment came when a small Chihuahua began yapping aggressively at Milo, trying to provoke a reaction. Instead of barking back or showing any signs of aggression, Milo simply turned his head away and began grooming his paw with complete indifference, exactly the way Shadow handled annoying situations. The Chihuahua eventually gave up and wandered away, clearly frustrated by Milo's refusal to engage in typical dog drama. Sarah noticed that Milo had also developed what she called selective hearing, another trait he had learned from his cat siblings. When she called his name during their walks, he would acknowledge her with a slight ear twitch or a brief glance, but would only come when he felt ready to do so. This wasn't defiance or stubbornness in the traditional dog sense. It was the dignified independence that cats are famous for. At home, Milo's integration with the cat family had reached new levels of harmony. The 4 animals had established their own daily routines and territorial arrangements. Mornings belonged to communal grooming sessions in the sunny patch by the kitchen window. Afternoons were for individual napping in various elevated locations throughout the apartment. Evenings were for group observation of the outside world from their perches on the windowsill. Milo had claimed the top of Sarah's dresser as his personal territory, much to her amusement. Every evening he would carefully jump from the bed to the chair to the dresser top, where he would settle in for his pre-dinner meditation session. From this vantage point, He could survey the entire apartment and keep watch over his domain, just like a cat guarding its territory. The most touching development was the bond that formed between Milo and Luna. The gray and white cat had appointed herself as Milo's primary mentor in the art of being feline. She would often be found sitting next to him, demonstrating proper grooming techniques or showing him the best spots for catching dust particles dancing in sunbeams. Luna seemed to take pride in Milo's progress, and Sarah often caught them sitting side by side, both wearing the same expression of calm satisfaction. Visitors to Sarah's apartment were consistently amazed by the peaceful coexistence of the four animals. There was no typical cat and dog tension, no chasing or territorial disputes. Instead, they found a household where a pit bull had learned to speak fluent cat and had been fully accepted into the feline social structure. Friends would often comment that they had never seen a dog so zen-like and serene. The transformation was so complete that Sarah's veterinarian, Dr. Martinez, was fascinated during Milo's regular checkups. He had never seen a dog with such calm, measured movements and such an independent yet affectionate personality. Dr. Martinez often remarked that Milo seemed to have developed the emotional intelligence of a cat while maintaining the loyalty and warmth of a dog, creating a personality that was truly unique in his experience. By 6 months old, Milo had grown into a handsome young dog with a muscular build typical of his breed, but his personality remained thoroughly feline. His coat had developed into a beautiful brindle pattern with touches of brown, black, and gold that shimmered in the sunlight. Despite his growing size, he maintained the graceful movements he had learned from his cat family, moving through the apartment with the silent precision of a shadow. Sarah's apartment had become something of a local curiosity. Word had spread through the neighborhood about the pit bull who thought he was a cat, and people would often stop by hoping to witness this unusual phenomenon for themselves. Sarah didn't mind the attention because she was proud of Milo and loved sharing his story. She had also noticed that Milo's gentle behavior was helping to change people's negative perceptions about pit bulls. The morning routine in their household had evolved into a beautiful daily ritual. All four animals would gather in the kitchen while Sarah prepared breakfast. But instead of the typical chaos of pets begging for food, there was an orderly ceremony. Whiskers would sit by his bowl with dignified patience. Shadow would perch on the windowsill, pretending not to care about food while secretly keeping one eye on the proceedings. Luna would position herself near Sarah's feet, offering gentle head bumps of encouragement. And Milo would sit perfectly straight in the corner, his tail tucked neatly around his front paws in classic cat fashion, waiting for his turn with serene patience. The feeding process itself had become an art form. Sarah had learned to serve each animal according to their individual preferences, which Milo had helped establish through his careful observation and imitation. He had developed a particular way of approaching his food bowl, first circling it once clockwise, then sitting for a moment of contemplation before beginning to eat with small, delicate bites. He would pause occasionally to clean his whiskers with his paw, a habit that always made Sarah smile since dogs don't actually have whiskers in the way cats do. One particularly memorable day, Sarah's sister Emma came to visit with her 2 children, ages 7 and 9. The kids had heard stories about Uncle Milo but had never met him in person. They arrived expecting to play with a typical dog, bringing balls and frisbees and anticipating an energetic afternoon of fetch and running around. Instead, they encountered Milo lounging regally on the back of the sofa, observing their arrival with calm interest. The children were initially confused by Milo's behavior. They tried to engage him in typical dog games, but Milo responded with feline politeness. When they threw a ball, he watched it bounce past with mild interest but made no move to chase it. When they called his name enthusiastically, he acknowledged them with a slow blink and a slight tail wag, but remained in his comfortable position. Emma was amazed by his calm demeanor, especially knowing his breed's reputation for high energy. The breakthrough came when 9-year-old Jake sat quietly on the floor and simply waited. Milo, recognizing this as proper cat protocol for earning trust, gracefully descended from his perch and approached the boy. He sniffed Jake's hand politely, then settled down beside him with the dignity of a cat granting an audience. Jake was thrilled when Milo began making his version of purring sounds, and from that moment the boy understood that this was not an ordinary dog. 7-year-old Sophie was fascinated by Milo's grooming habits. She sat mesmerized as he went through his afternoon cleaning routine, carefully licking his paws and using them to clean behind his ears. When Sophie tentatively reached out to pet him, Milo allowed the attention graciously, even closing his eyes in contentment the way cats do when receiving approval. By the end of the visit, both children were completely charmed by Milo's unique personality. The interaction with the children revealed another aspect of Milo's character that delighted Sarah. He had learned from his cat mentors how to be selectively social. Unlike many dogs who become overwhelmed with excitement around children, Milo remained calm and measured in his interactions. He would accept attention when offered, but he also knew how to politely remove himself from situations when he needed space, retreating to one of his elevated perches to observe from a comfortable distance. As autumn arrived, Milo discovered the joy of hunting dust particles and floating leaves that drifted past the windows. He had learned this behavior from watching Shadow, who was an expert at tracking tiny moving objects. Milo would sit motionless for long periods, his eyes fixed on a barely visible speck floating in a sunbeam, occasionally lifting one paw in preparation for a pounce that never quite materialized. This behavior was so thoroughly cat-like that Sarah often forgot she was watching a dog. The seasonal change also brought out Milo's appreciation for cozy sleeping spots. He had claimed several locations throughout the apartment as his personal retreats, each chosen for specific qualities he had learned to value from his feline family. There was the sunny spot by the living room window for morning naps, the soft chair in Sarah's bedroom for afternoon rest, and the warm space near the heating vent for evening relaxation. He rotated between these locations with the precision of a cat following an internal schedule. Sarah began documenting Milo's behaviors with photos and videos, initially just for her own amusement, but increasingly because friends and family requested updates on his progress. The images told a remarkable story of adaptation and acceptance. There were photos of Milo sitting in perfect formation with his 3 cat siblings, all 4 animals displaying identical postures and expressions. There were videos of him attempting to squeeze into boxes that were far too small for his growing body. Determined to participate in the cat tradition of box occupation, regardless of practical considerations. The most touching photos were of Milo's interactions with each of his cat mentors. With Whiskers, he had developed a friendship based on mutual respect and shared afternoon naps. With Shadow, he had learned the art of dignified observation and the importance of maintaining personal space. With Luna, he had formed the closest bond, and they were often photographed engaged in mutual grooming sessions, with Luna carefully cleaning Milo's ears while he attempted to return the favor with his much larger tongue. Winter brought new challenges and discoveries for Milo as he experienced his first cold season in the company of his feline family. The cats had always been indoor creatures, content to observe the world from the warmth of their apartment, and Milo had naturally adopted their preference for comfort over outdoor adventures. When Sarah bundled him up for necessary walks, he approached the cold weather with the same dignified resignation that cats show when faced with unavoidable inconveniences. During these winter months, Milo's bond with his cat siblings deepened even further. The 4 animals developed a system of shared warmth that was both practical and heartwarming. On particularly cold days, they would create what Sarah called the cuddle formation on her bed. Whiskers would claim the spot near the pillows, Shadow would curl up in the middle, Luna would settle near the foot of the bed, and Milo would carefully position himself to provide maximum warmth for all 3 cats without overwhelming them with his larger size. Sarah's neighbors had grown accustomed to seeing her unusual family through her apartment windows, and Milo had become something of a neighborhood celebrity. Mrs. Patterson from the apartment across the courtyard would often call Sarah to report on Milo's latest activities, delighted by his dignified presence on the windowsill. "He's doing that sitting thing again," she would say, referring to Milo's habit of sitting perfectly upright with his tail wrapped around his front paws, gazing out at the world with the patient observation of a meditation master. The winter months also revealed Milo's developing personality quirks that were uniquely his own. Beyond just imitating his cat companions, he had begun to show preferences for certain textures and temperatures that were distinctly individual. He preferred drinking water that was slightly cool but not cold, and he had developed a fascination with soft fabrics, often kneading blankets and pillows with his front paws in a motion that was remarkably similar to a cat making biscuits. One snowy afternoon, Sarah decided to introduce Milo to catnip, curious to see how he would react to something that drove his feline housemates into states of blissful intoxication. She sprinkled some dried catnip on his favorite blanket and watched with amusement as Milo approached it with his usual careful investigation. To everyone's surprise, he had a mild but definite reaction to the herb, rolling gently on the blanket and making his version of happy purring sounds. While not as dramatic as the cat's responses, his enjoyment was unmistakable and thoroughly charming. Sarah's friends had started bringing their own pets to meet Milo, fascinated by reports of his unusual behavior. These encounters provided endless entertainment, as traditional cats and dogs tried to figure out how to interact with Milo. Dogs were often confused by his lack of typical canine enthusiasm, while cats seemed to accept him more readily, recognizing something familiar in his mannerisms despite his obviously non-feline appearance. The most memorable of these meetings occurred when Sarah's friend Maria brought her golden retriever, Buddy, for a playdate. Buddy arrived with typical golden retriever exuberance, ready to play and make friends. Milo's response was to sit calmly and assess this energetic newcomer, with the careful evaluation of a cat deciding whether a new acquaintance was worthy of attention. When Buddy tried to initiate play by bringing Milo a tennis ball, Milo sniffed it politely and then sat down, clearly communicating that he found the concept of fetching somewhat beneath his dignity. The interaction became even more amusing when Buddy, frustrated by Milo's lack of interest in traditional dog games, began trying to copy Milo's behavior instead. Sarah and Maria watched in delight as Buddy attempted to sit with the same upright posture as Milo, tried to clean his paws with his tongue, and even made awkward attempts at slow blinking. By the end of the visit, Buddy had learned a new level of calm from Milo, while Milo had graciously accepted Buddy as a pleasant but somewhat excitable acquaintance. These social interactions helped Sarah understand just how special Milo's upbringing had been. He had learned to communicate in a language that transcended typical species barriers, using body language and energy, rather than the more direct approaches favored by most dogs. He could convey friendliness, disinterest, contentment, or need for space with subtle movements and expressions that both cats and humans could understand intuitively. As winter progressed, Milo's unique perspective on life began to influence not just other animals, but also the humans who met him. Sarah noticed that visitors to her apartment often left feeling more relaxed and centered after spending time with Milo. His calm presence and patient observation seemed to encourage people to slow down and appreciate the moment rather than rushing through their interactions. The phenomenon was particularly noticeable with Sarah's stressed-out co-worker, Janet, who had been going through a difficult divorce. When Janet visited one evening feeling overwhelmed and anxious, Milo seemed to sense her emotional state. Instead of his usual polite acknowledgement of visitors, he approached Janet directly and settled down beside her chair, offering his quiet presence as comfort. His steady breathing and gentle warmth had a calming effect that Janet found deeply soothing. Dr. Martinez, during one of Milo's routine checkups, commented on the remarkable psychological development he observed in the young dog. Milo's ability to read social situations and respond appropriately was far beyond what was typical for his age and breed. He had somehow learned to combine the emotional intelligence of cats with the loyalty and therapeutic instincts of dogs, creating a personality that was both independent and deeply caring. The veterinarian was particularly impressed by Milo's handling of the medical examination. Most dogs either became anxious and resistant or overly excited during vet visits, but Milo approached the experience with calm cooperation. He allowed Dr. Martinez to examine him thoroughly while maintaining the dignified composure of a cat who understood that certain indignities were necessary for health maintenance. His behavior made the examination easier for everyone involved and further demonstrated his unique ability to adapt to various situations with grace. Spring arrived with a burst of activity that awakened new instincts in Milo, while maintaining his essentially feline character. The apartment filled with fresh air and sunlight as Sarah opened windows for the first time in months, and all four animals gravitated toward these sources of warmth and interesting smells. Milo discovered the joy of watching birds and insects through the screen, developing an intense focus that could last for hours as he observed the outdoor world with the patient attention of a dedicated naturalist. His birdwatching technique was purely feline in its approach. He would position himself on the windowsill with perfect stillness, his eyes tracking every movement outside with laser-like concentration. Occasionally, his jaw would make small chattering movements, exactly like his cat siblings when they spotted prey. The only difference was his size, which made his presence on the windowsill more dramatic and somehow more amusing. Sarah often found herself photographing these moments, captivated by the sight of her muscular pit bull displaying such delicate, cat-like behavior. The spring season also brought the return of regular outdoor walks, and Milo's approach to these adventures continued to puzzle and delight other dog owners in the neighborhood. While other dogs pulled on their leashes with excitement or marked every tree and fire hydrant, Milo walked with measured dignity, pausing only when something genuinely captured his interest. His behavior reminded Sarah of taking a cat on a leash, if such a thing were practical, with the same careful consideration of surroundings and selective engagement with the environment. During one memorable walk, they encountered Mrs. Chen walking her elderly Persian cat Princess on a harness. Most dogs would have shown intense interest in the cat, either wanting to chase or play, but Milo's reaction was remarkably different. He sat down politely and waited to be introduced, recognizing a fellow feline spirit despite the obvious species difference. Princess, perhaps sensing something familiar in Milo's calm energy, showed no fear and actually approached him with curiosity. The two animals sniffed each other politely before sitting side by side, both wearing expressions of mutual respect and understanding. Mrs. Chen was amazed by the interaction and began telling other neighbors about the remarkable pit bull who seemed to speak fluent cat. This led to more introductions and encounters that consistently demonstrated Milo's unique ability to communicate across species lines. Local cat owners discovered that their typically skittish pets were comfortable around Milo in ways they had never experienced with other dogs. His presence seemed to put cats at ease, perhaps because he had learned to move and think like one of them. Sarah decided to document these interactions more systematically, starting a social media account dedicated to Milo's adventures. The photos and videos she shared showed Milo in various situations, always maintaining his distinctive blend of canine loyalty and feline independence. The account quickly gained followers who were charmed by Milo's unique personality and inspired by his story of adaptation and acceptance. One video that particularly captured people's attention showed Milo's morning routine. The camera followed him as he woke up, stretched in perfect feline fashion, approached his water bowl with delicate precision, and then settled into his favorite sunny spot for what could only be described as meditation. The caption read, "Morning Zen with Milo, who believes mindfulness is a full-time job." The video went viral, accumulating thousands of views and comments from people around the world who were touched by Milo's peaceful approach to life. The growing online attention brought unexpected benefits. Sarah began receiving messages from other pet owners who were dealing with difficult animal relationships in their homes. They sought advice on how to create the kind of harmony they saw in Milo's household. Sarah found herself becoming an informal counselor, sharing the lessons she had learned about patience, acceptance, and allowing animals to develop their own unique personalities without forcing them into predetermined roles. One particularly moving message came from a family who had adopted a pit bull puppy but were struggling with negative reactions from their neighbors and even some family members. They felt discouraged and were considering returning the puppy to the shelter. Sarah's response included photos and videos of Milo's gentle interactions with children, cats, and elderly neighbors, demonstrating that breed stereotypes could be overcome through love, proper socialization, and understanding each animal's individual nature. The family decided to keep their puppy and began implementing some of the strategies they observed in Milo's household. They introduced calm routines, provided elevated resting spots, and most importantly, they stopped trying to force their puppy to behave like their idea of what a dog should be. Instead, they allowed the puppy to develop his own personality, and the results were remarkable. Within weeks, their puppy became calmer, more confident, and better accepted by their community. As spring turned toward summer, Milo's first birthday approached, and Sarah planned a celebration that honored his unique character. Rather than a typical dog birthday party with lots of noise and excitement, she organized a quiet gathering that respected Milo's feline sensibilities. The guest list included the neighbors who had come to love Milo, along with their cats and calm dogs who had formed friendships with him over the months. The party took place in Sarah's apartment, with comfortable seating arrangements that allowed both humans and animals to relax and socialize at their own pace. There were elevated perches for cats, comfortable floor cushions for dogs, and plenty of quiet spaces for anyone who needed a break from socializing. The centerpiece was a special cake made from pet-safe ingredients that all the animals could share, designed to look like a giant cat treat, but sized appropriately for Milo's appetite. The most touching moment of the celebration came when all 4 household animals gathered around their shared cake. Whiskers, Shadow, Luna, and Milo sat in perfect formation, each waiting patiently for their turn to sample the birthday treat. The photo of this moment, showing 3 cats and 1 dog displaying identical posture and expressions, became one of the most popular images on Milo's social media account. It perfectly captured the essence of their unusual family and the remarkable transformation that had occurred through love, acceptance, and the willingness to let each individual be exactly who they were meant to be. Summer brought new adventures and opportunities for Milo to demonstrate his unique character to an even wider audience. Sarah had been contacted by a local animal rescue organization that had heard about Milo's story through social media. They invited him to participate in their annual adoption event, hoping that his gentle nature and positive example might help other pit bulls find loving homes. Sarah was initially hesitant, worried that the crowds and noise might overwhelm Milo, but she ultimately decided that sharing his story could help other animals in need. The preparation for the event revealed just how well-trained Milo had become through his unconventional upbringing. Unlike many dogs who needed extensive preparation for public appearances, Milo seemed to understand instinctively how to behave in new situations. His cat-taught skills of observation and patience served him well as he assessed each new environment before deciding how to respond. Sarah practiced walking him through crowded areas, and he maintained his characteristic calm dignity, even when surrounded by unfamiliar sights, sounds, and smells. The day of the adoption event was warm and sunny, perfect for the outdoor gathering at the local park. When Milo arrived, he immediately surveyed the scene with his typical feline assessment, taking in the booths, crowds of people, and numerous other animals present. Instead of becoming excited or overwhelmed like many dogs might, he sat down calmly beside Sarah and began his patient observation routine, exactly as he would do when settling into a new room at home. The rescue organization had set up a special area where Milo could meet potential adopters and their families, but his role was more as an ambassador than as an adoptable animal. His job was to show people that pit bulls could be gentle, well-behaved, and wonderful family companions. The organizers had prepared information sheets about responsible pit bull ownership and the importance of proper socialization, using Milo's story as an example of what was possible with love and patience. Children were naturally drawn to Milo, perhaps sensing his calm energy and non-threatening demeanor. Unlike many dogs who might become overwhelmed by multiple children wanting to pet them simultaneously, Milo handled the attention with the grace of a therapy animal. He would greet each child individually, allowing them to pet him gently before politely moving on to the next eager visitor. His behavior was so consistently gentle that parents who might have been nervous about their children interacting with a pit bull quickly became comfortable and impressed. One particularly memorable interaction occurred with a family that included a young boy with autism. The child had difficulty with most social interactions and was generally afraid of dogs. But something about Milo's calm presence intrigued him. Milo seemed to sense the boy's need for gentle, non-demanding companionship and simply sat quietly nearby, making no sudden movements or demands for attention. Gradually, the boy became comfortable enough to sit beside Milo, and eventually he began petting him with the careful, deliberate movements that Milo had learned to recognize and appreciate from his cat siblings. The boy's mother was moved to tears watching her son's peaceful interaction with Milo. She explained that her son rarely connected with animals or people in such a natural way, and she was amazed by Milo's intuitive understanding of what her child needed. This interaction became one of many that day that demonstrated Milo's remarkable ability to adapt his behavior to meet the needs of different individuals, a skill he had learned from observing how cats assess and respond to various situations. Throughout the day, Milo met dozens of people and helped facilitate several successful adoptions. Families who had been hesitant about pit bulls left the event with new understanding and appreciation for the breed. 3 pit bull puppies found homes that day, with their new families specifically citing Milo's example as inspiration for their decision to adopt. The rescue organizers were thrilled with the results and invited Milo to become a regular ambassador for their cause. The success of the adoption event led to other opportunities for Milo to share his story and positive influence. A local elementary school invited him to participate in their reading program, where children could practice reading aloud to therapy animals. Milo's calm presence and patient attention made him perfect for this role, as he would lie quietly beside young readers, providing comfort and encouragement without judgment or distraction. During his first visit to the school, Milo demonstrated the same intuitive understanding of individual needs that had impressed everyone at the adoption event. Some children were confident readers who simply enjoyed having a furry audience, while others struggled with reading and needed extra patience and support. Milo seemed to sense the difference, offering gentle encouragement through his presence while never making any child feel pressured or rushed. The librarian, Mrs. Rodriguez, was particularly impressed by how Milo handled a shy second grader named Emma, who had severe reading anxiety. Most therapy animals, while well-intentioned, could sometimes be distracting or demanding of attention. Milo, however, positioned himself just close enough to provide comfort, while maintaining the respectful distance he had learned from his cat mentors. He would listen attentively to Emma's halting words, occasionally offering soft eye contact or a gentle tail wag, but never interrupting her concentration. After several sessions, Emma's reading confidence improved dramatically. She began looking forward to her time with Milo, and her teacher reported significant progress in her overall academic performance. Emma's mother later told Sarah that her daughter talked about Milo constantly at home, describing him as the smartest dog who knows how to be quiet when you need him to be. This description perfectly captured Milo's unique ability to provide support through presence rather than activity. Word of Milo's therapeutic abilities spread throughout the community, leading to requests from other organizations. A local nursing home invited him to visit elderly residents, many of whom had cognitive impairments or felt lonely and isolated. Sarah was initially concerned about how Milo might react to the unfamiliar environment and the sometimes unpredictable behaviors of residents with dementia, but once again, his feline-influenced wisdom proved invaluable. During his first visit to Sunset Manor, Milo demonstrated remarkable sensitivity to the emotional and physical needs of the elderly residents. He seemed to understand intuitively that some people needed gentle interaction, while others required more space and patience. With residents who were agitated or confused, he would maintain a calm distance, offering his peaceful presence without adding to their stress. With those who seemed lonely or sad, he would approach slowly and settle nearby, providing comfort through his steady, reassuring presence. One of the most touching moments occurred with Mr. Patterson, a retired veterinarian who had been withdrawn and uncommunicative since his wife's death 6 months earlier. When Milo entered his room, Mr. Patterson's eyes lit up with interest for the first time in weeks. As Sarah watched, the elderly man began talking to Milo about his own experiences with animals, sharing stories about pets he had treated and loved throughout his career. Milo listened with the patient attention of a trained counselor, occasionally offering a gentle nuzzle or a soft sigh that seemed to encourage Mr. Patterson to continue sharing his memories. The nursing home staff was amazed by the positive responses they observed during Milo's visits. Residents who rarely spoke would open up when he was present, and those who struggled with anxiety seemed to find peace in his calm energy. The activities director requested regular visits, noting that Milo's presence had a lasting positive effect that extended well beyond his actual visits. As summer progressed, Milo's reputation as a therapy animal grew, but Sarah was careful to maintain balance in his life. She made sure he had plenty of quiet time at home with his cat family, respecting his need for the peaceful routines that had shaped his character. The contrast between his public work and his private life was remarkable to observe. After a day of providing comfort and support to dozens of people, Milo would return home and immediately revert to his cat-like behaviors, settling into his favorite sunny spot for a grooming session or joining his feline siblings for their evening meditation time. This balance between service and self-care was perhaps one of the most valuable lessons Milo had learned from his cat mentors. Unlike many therapy animals who could become overwhelmed by constant giving, Milo had learned the importance of maintaining his own emotional equilibrium. He knew when to engage and when to withdraw, when to offer comfort and when to seek it for himself. This wisdom made him not only a more effective therapy animal, but also a healthier and happier individual. As Milo approached his second birthday, his influence had spread far beyond Sarah's small apartment and into the wider community. What had begun as a simple rescue story had evolved into something much more significant, a testament to the power of acceptance, understanding, and the beautiful things that can happen when we allow individuals to be exactly who they are meant to be. Milo had become more than just a pit bull who thought he was a cat. He had become a bridge between different worlds, different species, and different ways of understanding what it means to live with dignity and grace. The local media had taken notice of Milo's story, and Sarah found herself fielding requests for interviews and feature articles. She was always careful to emphasize that Milo's remarkable character wasn't just an amusing curiosity, but rather the result of thoughtful care, patience, and the willingness to let him develop naturally, without forcing him into preconceived expectations. The message resonated with people who were dealing with their own challenges in accepting differences, whether in their pets, their families, or their communities. One particularly meaningful interview was with a family magazine that focused on stories of hope and inspiration. The journalist Maria Santos spent several hours observing Milo in his natural environment, documenting his interactions with his cat siblings, his therapy work, and his daily routines. She was struck by the peace that seemed to emanate from the household and the way all four animals had created their own harmonious culture that transcended traditional species boundaries. The resulting article, titled "The Zen Master in Fur: How One Pit Bull Learned to Live Like a Cat and Teach Humans About Acceptance," became one of the magazine's most popular features. Readers from around the world wrote in to share their own stories of unusual animal friendships and the lessons they had learned from watching animals adapt and thrive in unexpected circumstances. Many credited Milo's story with inspiring them to be more patient and accepting in their own lives, whether with their pets or with the humans around them. The article also caught the attention of animal behaviorists and researchers who were fascinated by Milo's development. Dr. Rebecca Chen, a leading expert in interspecies communication and animal psychology, contacted Sarah to request permission to study Milo's behavior patterns. She was particularly interested in how his early socialization with cats had affected his stress responses, communication methods, and problem-solving approaches compared to traditionally raised dogs. Dr. Chen's preliminary observations confirmed what Sarah and everyone who knew Milo had suspected. His cat-influenced upbringing had created unique neural pathways and behavioral patterns that were distinctly different from typical canine development. His ability to read social situations, his emotional regulation, and his communication style all showed influences from feline behavior while maintaining the fundamental loyalty and human bonding characteristics of his canine nature. The research findings had implications beyond just academic interest. Dr. Chen suggested that Milo's development model could inform new approaches to animal socialization and therapy training. The combination of feline independence and emotional intelligence with canine loyalty and human connection created an ideal temperament for therapeutic work. Several training programs began incorporating elements of cross-species socialization into their curricula, though none achieved quite the same remarkable results as Milo's natural upbringing. Meanwhile, Milo continued his therapy work with characteristic grace and effectiveness. His reputation had spread to other cities, and Sarah began receiving requests for visits from schools, hospitals, and nursing homes throughout the region. She was selective about accepting these invitations, always prioritizing Milo's well-being and ensuring that his work remained fulfilling rather than overwhelming. One of the most rewarding expanded programs was with a children's hospital, where Milo worked with young patients who were dealing with long-term illnesses and treatments. His calm presence and intuitive understanding of individual needs made him particularly effective with children who were frightened, in pain, or struggling with the isolation that often accompanies serious illness. The pediatric staff reported that children often showed measurable improvements in mood and cooperation with treatments after spending time with Milo. 8-year-old Lily, who was undergoing treatment for leukemia, formed a particularly special bond with Milo during his weekly visits. She had been withdrawn and fearful since her diagnosis, but something about Milo's gentle energy helped her find peace during difficult treatments. She began calling him my meditation dog and would practice deep breathing exercises while petting him, using his calm presence as an anchor during moments of pain or anxiety. Lily's mother later told Sarah that Milo had given her daughter something that no medicine could provide: the ability to find moments of peace and joy even in the midst of scary and uncertain circumstances. This feedback reinforced Sarah's belief that Milo's greatest gift wasn't just his unusual behavior, but his ability to teach others about resilience, acceptance, and finding calm in the storm. As Milo's second birthday celebration approached, Sarah reflected on the incredible journey that had begun with a tiny abandoned puppy behind a dumpster. That frightened, half-starved creature had grown into a remarkable individual who touched lives throughout their community and beyond. His influence had helped change perceptions about pit bulls, demonstrated the power of cross-species friendships, and shown countless people that sometimes the most beautiful things happen when we stop trying to control outcomes and simply allow love and acceptance to guide the way. The birthday celebration was held in the community center, with an open invitation to everyone whose lives Milo had touched over the past 2 years. The guest list included children from the reading program, elderly residents from the nursing home, families who had adopted pets inspired by Milo's example, and neighbors who had watched his story unfold from the beginning. Most importantly, Whiskers, Shadow, and Luna were there, the 3 cats who had made it all possible by accepting a lost puppy as one of their own and teaching him that being different didn't mean being wrong. As Sarah watched, Milo moved through the celebration with his characteristic dignity, greeting each guest with appropriate attention while maintaining his calm center. She realized that his story was really about much more than a dog who learned to act like a cat. It was about the power of unconditional acceptance, the beauty of finding family in unexpected places, and the remarkable things that become possible when we create space for individuals to become their authentic selves. Milo had taught an entire community that love doesn't require understanding everything about someone. Sometimes it simply requires accepting them exactly as they are and trusting that their unique perspective might have something valuable to offer the world. The celebration ended with Milo and his 3 feline siblings settling into their familiar formation, 4 friends who had created their own perfect family despite every conventional expectation. As they sat together in the evening light, each wearing the same expression of contentment and dignity, they represented something beautiful and hopeful, proof that love, patience, and acceptance can overcome any barrier and create families that are stronger and more wonderful than anything we might have planned or expected.